police and fire and our first responders is also a priority. So you'll see all that as part of this budget, and pretty proud of what's put together. So I won't belabor it. I'll let them go through this process and tell you what, and I thank y'all for being here and watching tonight. So David Cook, our city manager.
I'm going. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Councilmember Crane, and thanks for everybody joining us tonight. And thanks for the staff. We've got police, fire, development services, code, and folks here to answer parks. Thank you, Richard, to answer the questions you might have. But let's go ahead and jump into it. I had the privilege and honor of presenting the recommended budget. It's now been about 2 weeks ago. We've had a couple budget work sessions with the city council. So we're well on our way on deliberating on the budget. Yeah, let's see. Let's see here. Huh? Now we're going. Hold on. No. Hold on. Technical difficulties. I could almost do it from memory, though. I saw some. There we go. Thank you very much. I start with this slide on the presentation to make a couple of points. One is, it is so nice to be 2 years after the start of COVID. One is we get to meet face to face, we get to talk to each other, we get to interact. That's different than how we've had to do the budget over the last couple years. And if you think back to March of 2020, schools were closed. We asked businesses to close. You remember back then? Very strange time. And we at the city, a lot of the people you see around the room still had to go to work each and every day, whether it was police, fire, water, TPW, Parks and Recreation, to provide services. So I'm incredibly proud of the organization as we worked our way through COVID. The other thing that I'd share with you is we also didn't know what the future held, right? That pandemic was a new experience for a lot of us. We did not know how it would impact the city financially. What would happen with property tax revenues? What would happen with sales tax revenues? And so I can tell you we're not entirely through COVID, as everybody knows, but the city, and again, I'm proud of the organization working our way through, we're in a much stronger financial position now than we have been in the last number of years. And I'll go through some of that to share with you how strong some of the revenue streams are, and also some of this is coming from growth. You heard Councilmember Crane talk about the big focus of this budget is about a safe and clean community, and we think those two things are connected. You'll hear about more police officers, you'll hear about a new engine company in far north Fort Worth and fire, but safety is more than just police and fire. Safety is also about vehicular safety, pedestrian safety, and you'll be hearing about more money for street lights, more money for pavement markings, more money for code enforcement. And so the focus is on being safe and clean community as part of the budget. I also want to take the opportunity to thank everybody who went out and voted in May for the different bond propositions. All of the bond proposition passed. I think that's incredibly positive for the city. That infrastructure is needed for a growing city. And one of the things we'll talk about is the city's growth. And you're going to hear me say the growth is not stopping. The growth is going to continue over the foreseeable future. and we need to be planning for future bond referendums as we implement the bond program that was approved by voters just this past May. These next couple of slides, I'll tell you that we're no different than other large organizations in the city of Fort Worth. Many companies, many organizations are finding it that it's harder to recruit and retain folks. We're going to tell you the same thing with the city of Fort Worth. And so we've got money in the budget to help make sure that we are able to recruit and retain top talent to provide great services for all of our residents and businesses here in the city. We are also not immune from all the cost increases that households face or businesses face, whether it's the cost of fuel, whether it's interest rates are going up. All those things impact the city as well. But I also want to say we're very conscious of affordability on citizens, affordability on households, and the affordability on businesses. We're going to talk about the tax rate, property tax rate coming down. One of the reasons that is because values are increasing. But we also want to be conscious of the impact that has on households and businesses. We're going to talk about water rates are not going up, stormwater rates are not going up, solid waste fees are not going up. That's in recognition of, again, all our businesses and households in Fort Worth. We will, however, talk about the environmental fee going up, and more on that as we go through the presentation. I made this point. We're a growing city. We're going to continue to grow. And the way I describe it is we grow about 20,000 people a year. So every 5 years, we add about 100,000 people. So think about the service needs that brings with it, as well as the infrastructure requirement of that growing community. This is, I think, I do it at different points in time on the presentation. DJ, raise your hand right there. That's the guy responsible for development, responding to development here in the city of Fort Worth. I'll have you think about this. During the pandemic, calendar year 2020, excuse me, he did more permits in 2020 than he did in 2019. Imagine that. So while I think what everybody did, everybody went home and did home projects, which helped drive up some of those permit numbers. But he did more permits in 2020 than he did in 19. He did more permits in 2021 than he did in 2020. And he's told all of us that he's going to do more permits in 2022 than he did in 21. So workload did not slow down for DJ during the pandemic, and the workload has only continued to go up. He's getting new resources, new staff to help with the demand. But all that to say, we're continuing to grow here in the city of Fort Worth. To me, the budget doesn't start in June and we present it to the council and they approve it in the end of September and we start in October. Our fiscal year is October to September. The city is getting input about the budget from citizens throughout the year. We have advisory committees that advise almost all our departments. We had the bond meetings in the spring. People talked about more than what was on the bond program. Staff goes to neighborhood association meetings, so the feedback is coming in all the time about what the city ought to be funding or not funding. And so I would tell you it's an ongoing process, and we invite that input throughout the year. These meetings are important because I get to share with you what's in the recommended budget, and then we can specifically talk about feedback and input related to that. So here's what you'll hear me say more than once. We're focusing on a safe and clean community. We're going to talk about why it's important to take care of the infrastructure after we build it and being good stewards about the infrastructure. We are a growing community. And I'll talk about the reduction in the property tax rate as we step forward. So here's the recommended operating budget. As we go through these numbers, I'm not going to read numbers to you, and I'm going to try to make a few points along the way. The point I'll make here is in our operating budget, if you look at fiscal year 23 recommended, our total operation of the city is a $2.3 billion operation. And it's more than just, we'll talk a lot about the general fund. That's where the property tax revenue is and sales tax, and where we pay for police and fire and libraries and parks and recreation and code. But the city is responsible for a lot of other operations that might not get the same conversation that the general fund gets. We run a regional water and sewer utility that provides water and sewer services for more than just the citizens of Fort Worth. That's a big operation. We run 3 municipal airports, Spinks in the far south, Alliance in the far north, and Meacham Airport. We run a convention center in a Will Rogers complex. We have a solid waste utility. We have a stormwater utility. All that to say that the operation of the city is more than the general fund. It's a big operation to the tune of $2.3 billion. This just shows that same information in a different chart. And we're going to move to the general fund, which is $915 million. So in the general fund, this is where the property tax revenue primarily goes. And if you look at property tax and sales tax, it makes up over 80% of all the revenues in the general fund. Right, so the remaining less than 20% is made up of all those other slices of the pie. And again, the majority is property and sales. Both property and sales tax have recovered in a very strong way coming out of the pandemic. I'll spend more on the property tax rate in a minute, but sales tax has also been very strong for the city. So this gives you an idea of what your tax bill may look like. So you get a tax bill and it includes the rate and the amount from everybody that can put something on your tax bill, right? And the city is part of that. So the city's tax rate, we'll talk about it in just a minute, would make up that proportion of your overall tax bill. So about a quarter of your tax bill is what the city is recommending. And then the other taxing entities like the ISD, like the water district, like the county or the hospital district are the other parts of the tax bill. Let me take a moment on this slide because what you pay in property taxes is a function of two things. One is the value of your home or the value of your business, and the other is the property tax rate. So first, let's talk about what is happening to all the values of property in Fort Worth. And when we talk about Fort Worth, this is property in 5 counties, right? It's not just Tarrant County. Fort Worth is in Denton County, Wise County, Parker County, and Johnson County, in addition to Tarrant County. Our total values in all those counties is going from a little over $87 billion to a little over $100 billion. That's the growth in values in Fort Worth. The $2.7 billion, when you see that new construction value, that's new stuff that's on the ground that didn't exist last year. That's new development. Right, so that's a pretty healthy number there, $2.7 billion of new growth that's on the ground. But nearly $10 billion is from growth in values of existing properties. Whether it's residential or commercial or business, those values are going up by nearly $10 billion. It's that growth that allows us to recommend a reduction in the property tax rate. So we are recommending that the property tax rate be reduced 2 cents, right, so that we're not capturing the entire growth in assessed values across the city. Let me go back to that one more time. The city has had a goal over the last number of years, going back at least 7 or 8 years, to reduce the property tax rate when we can. And so the tax rate about 7 years ago was 85.5 cents. And so it's been reduced by over 14 cents over that period of time. But also growth in assessed values has been strong during that period of time as well. But it's a goal of the city and the city council to reduce that tax rate when we can. So this just shows values are going up, property tax rate is going down, but we're still capturing what I would call a healthy growth in property tax revenue year over year. And that's what the budget then is based on when we talk about what is funding police and fire, what is funding the maintenance of infrastructure, and what is also available to fund future bond programs. Switching to the expenditure side, one night I'm going to lose my voice. Switching to the expenditure side, we're just showing the larger departments, police and fire, make up over half the general fund budget on the expenditure side. The other large departments include transportation, public works, parks and recreation, and economic development. This just shows the growth year over year for the different departments. I won't spend a lot of time on that. But again, police and fire, again, making up more than 50% of the total budget. So what's in the recommended budget? One is the property tax rate reduction that I mentioned, but we're also going to talk about increases in spending to do better in a safe and clean community, infrastructure stewardship, addressing growth, and as I mentioned, workforce retention and recruitment. So what's in there when we talk about safe and clean community? Well, more police officers on patrol, more investigators for homicide and crimes against children, more money for 911 communications, not just in the police department, but in also looking at improving the overall process of 911. Our homeless outreach program enforcement, I got it, is in there. That's been a popular program in trying to deal positively with the homeless population and homeless camps. Crisis intervention team, neighborhood patrol officers. We're expanding the school crossing guard program to include middle schools. And I already mentioned we're adding an engine company for the fire department in far north Fort Worth. As I mentioned, safe and clean is more than just adding police officers and firefighters. It's about improving what we do in maintaining street lights, right? And we believe that leads to a safer community. It means we're going to put more money in pavement markings to make driving around the city safer. It means adding resources in the code department to do more inspections of multifamily properties. We're going to talk a little bit more in a minute about street sweeping, litter abatement, and homeless camp cleanups, and when we talk about the environmental fund. But we are focusing on making the city safer and cleaner. We also talk about needing to in the south side of the city. It's a community center up north, and we will be looking the same as we implement the 22 bond program and the projects that are in there. We are increasing the amount of money we put toward the maintenance of our infrastructure. A growing city needs to do that year over year, as we build more infrastructure, we have more infrastructure on the ground, and then there's more infrastructure to maintain. So we are every year trying to set aside more money to take care of the maintenance of infrastructure we already have. That last bullet is funding that comes out of our water fund, and I'll touch on that here and mention it a little bit later. Does everybody remember the winter storm and the broken water pipes? I got an affirmative in the back. Thank you. Almost all of the broken water pipe is cast iron, which was popular in a couple decades in the 50s and 60s, I think, and we're using any chance we get to replace that pipe, and so there's a concerted effort to accelerate the replacement of cast iron pipe. Did somebody say it also in hot weather is problematic too, right? Right. Here are some of the other funds other than the general fund. I'll talk about enterprise, special revenue, and some of the, enterprise and special revenue. Here we go. Enterprise funds. These are funds that essentially generate their own revenue, like the water and sewer fund. You pay a water bill, that goes to support that. Our solid waste, if we're picking up garbage or waste management is picking up your garbage, you pay a monthly fee to have that service provided. So these enterprise funds are not supported by sales tax, not supported by property tax, and they are intended to stand on their own. Couple things, just real quick through these funds. I'll read the first bullet. There's no increase in rates in the water fund. It's a big operation. Solid waste fund. There's no increase in solid waste fees as part of the recommended budget, but I do need to describe one thing that is occurring. Right now, the solid waste fund is paid almost entirely by residential fees, right? So only residential customers pay into the solid waste fee, almost 100%, but not quite. But we are spending money out of the solid waste fund that should be borne by a broader group of customers. For example, we do homeless camp cleanup through the solid waste fund. We do litter pickup through the solid waste fund. We do illegal dumping cleanup through the solid waste fund. That should be borne by businesses as well as residents, as well as industrial properties. And so we are taking some of our costs that we currently incur in the solid waste fund, and we're going to shift that to the environmental fund. I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's that shifting of these costs that also allow us to say, that's one of the strategies that allows us to say that there's no increase in the fee for solid waste. And then stormwater. There's no fee increase in stormwater. And when you think about what is paid for out of the stormwater, that's a lot of the capital projects that deal with flooding. I would tell you from June 3rd to last Monday, nobody even thought about the stormwater fund. But with the rain, right, that came at the beginning of this week, everybody remembered why we had a stormwater utility and why that spending on some of the investment is important in dealing with flooding in the city of Fort Worth. Jumping to special revenue funds, I'm only going to touch on a few of these, mainly crime control and prevention district, culture and tourism, and we'll talk about the environmental fee. Crime control and prevention district is a half cent of our sales tax, and voters reapproved it, I guess that's the right term, in the July of 2020 for 10 years. So CCPD, half-cent sales tax dedicated for those purposes, is in place for the next essentially 8-9 years from now. Since it's sales tax, it's got strong growth projections tied to it. This is where we're paying for the school crossing guards. This is where we pay for some of the HOPE team, crisis intervention, neighborhood patrol officers as well. Culture and tourism. This is primarily hotel tax. And so when you think of the revenue streams from COVID, when nobody was traveling, when businesses were shutting down, nobody's going to conventions, this is the fund that took a hit. I'm glad to tell you that most of these revenues are almost back to where they were before COVID. So people are traveling again. The convention center is holding events. And you'll hear us talking about in the next number of months about getting back on track of talking about the convention center expansion, which got put on hold during COVID. Now let me talk about the environmental fund or the environmental fee. I got two questions for you. Has anybody seen a street sweeper? I'm listening. Yes or no?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
That was at my dad's house. Yeah, I saw one of the
All right.
sucking up
There. You're going to see a lot more if the budget is approved. So one of the jokes has been, though, a lot of people, when you ask that question, have never seen a street sweeper in Fort Worth. I'm going to tell you, we have two of them, right? That's not nearly enough for the city the size of Fort Worth. Now, the other question I'm asking you, do you know what your fee is, environmental fee is on your water bill? All right, it's 50 cents. So every household that is a water customer has a 50-cent fee on your water bill per month. That's the same fee that's been in place since 1996. It was 50 cents in 1996. It's 50 cents in 2022. We're recommending that that go to $1.50. And correspondingly, commercial properties will go up a corresponding amount. Industrial properties will go up a corresponding amount. And our intent by recommending an increase in that fee is to tell you that we're going to make a visible difference in the cleanliness of the city, right? So we're going to recommend increasing the fee with the council's approval. It's our intent that we put into place some of these programs, and I'll just touch on some of them, so that we will all see a visible difference in the cleanliness of the city. And I can say that because the people that have to make that true are sitting in that corner, right? And they've now heard me say this at multiple budget meetings, that we're going to make a visible difference in the cleanliness of the city. And just one example is we're going to get 12 street sweepers instead of 2. We're going to clean, instead of 580 miles a year, it's going to go closer to 6,300 miles a year. So we're counting on you seeing street sweepers much more often. We're going to increase the number of litter crews that we have. We're going to increase the number of homeless camps that we clean up. And so, again, we're recommending we're going to increase the environmental fee. We're going to make a visible difference in the cleanliness of the city. Just a recap, back to when you talk about all the money that the city spends, it's $2.3 billion. Here's our priorities: safe and clean city, maintain the infrastructure that we build, address growth, and again, did I mention that we're reducing the property tax rate 2 cents? Our next steps, we had a work session today. That's what Councilmember Crane was talking about. We have 2 more scheduled. We have a public hearing on the budget. That's a formal public hearing at a city council meeting. That's September 3rd. And then, if all goes according to plan, the council will approve the budget on September 27th. We're working our way through a number of these meetings. So there we are right here, Thursday, August 25th, R.D. Evans. We have meetings next week and through September, and the public hearing and the other meetings that I mentioned with City Council. Who gets this part? There you go.
Okay, this is some examples of other ways that we're asking for people to provide us feedback and engage with us on the budget. So for the first time, you can call the city's call center, and one of the customer service reps will be able to take down your comments, and you can make that phone call in English or Spanish. We have the My Fort Worth app that you can submit your comments. You can also send an email to fortworthconnection@fortworthtexas.gov. You can also use that email to submit questions during tonight's meeting. And we also have an online comment form, which is on the city's budget webpage. And we also have something using the platform Thought Exchange, where you can go on there and you can provide your thoughts, concerns, ideas about the budget. And what this platform allows you to do is you can go on and read what other people have said, and then you can like those, which increases like their popularity on the app, and then you can also submit ones of your own. And then we'll be using all of this information will be gathered, and it'll be given to council. So this is for tonight. During the meeting, you can text your questions, or you can send them through email to fortworthconnection@fortworthtexas.gov. And I'm going to go ahead and leave that up so that people can see it. So I think we're at the question and answer portion of the evening. And just some guidelines for tonight. We will take one question at a time from each person. And we ask that you keep your comments and questions brief and that they are related to the budget. We'll also be taking the questions that come in through email and text. And if we have time, we'll come back around and allow people second questions. We also will have staff available after. If there's a question that came up, you don't want to ask it publicly, you can go and talk to staff. We also have comment cards that you can complete and turn in, and we will compile all of that and give that to council. First, I want to ask Amethyst to come up. And we gave you dots when you came in, and we asked you to mark what you thought were the most important items. And Amethyst has the results from tonight.
Sure. So thanks everybody for being here and for participating in the exercise and being engaged with the city's budget. So before I tell you what your items, your most voted on items were tonight, I want to give you a round of what has already happened in other meetings and how other places have voted. So we had a meeting up north at the Summer Glen Library. Their top vote was for development services, for more analysts to improve permitting and consultants for the subdivision ordinance. We had a meeting south at Southwest Community Center, and they had a tie. So between TPW for street lighting improvements, increasing crews from 9 to 12, and library, hire 14 for the Southwest Library, opening in 2023, which makes sense. And we had a meeting yesterday in District 7 at Boswell High School. They also had a tie. So parks, youth sports division pilot for after-school sports programs, and development services to increase customer service staff by 12 employees. So tonight you've had a four-way tie. So development services to increase zoning and historic preservation staff and update the zoning ordinance. The second is code compliance to clean up to 3 times as many homeless camps to support homeless outreach enforcement HOPE team efforts. Park and recreation, additional location for the Fort Worth at 6 program. And TPW, street lighting improvements, including increasing crews from 9 to 12. So those are your top voted items today. And hopefully that gave us some time to get some questions in, and we'll turn it over. I'll come around with a microphone if you do have a question that you'd like to ask publicly.
Okay. If you'd like to ask a question, just raise your hand, and Amethyst will come and bring you the microphone. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Willoughby.
Well, it does relate to the budget, and what's not mentioned up there, I'm sure every city has wasteful spending. I'm trying to look at some wasteful spending, what I call wasteful spending for a sample. Oh, I'm sorry. For a sample, what I call wasteful spending. That's sorry, I don't think it's working though. But My question had to go to the councilman, Mr. Crane. I asked him earlier if he'd take a question. He said yes, he would. So I'm hoping he will take the question. A little while back on the city council agenda was to vote to put $250,000 to outside attorneys to keep Chief Fitzgerald from coming back to his job. And we don't understand why our city's spending that money. I think that's wasteful spending. He wants appeals and everything. So I'd like for Mr. Crane to answer why did he vote. And the second thing is, does that money come out of general funds, or where's that money come out of? And this also makes it up to $500,000 actually to keep Chief Fitzgerald from coming back. But Mr. Crane wasn't here on the other part. But he's here and he voted for $250,000 worth to go there. And I'd like to know why. Chris Snell is the only council member that voted against it. But another thing I want to do, I want to spoke out one thing real quick. I've asked each council member, each place, this question.
I think that's the one question that you have for right now.
I just want to be fair with you, but that's why I'm asking. All the council
And
members down the road.
I believe that question was asked at a previous meeting, and I don't know if David wants to
There
address
was never
it.
an answer.
Sure, it was answered. It was asked at 2 previous meetings by Bob. The reason Bob doesn't ask me is because I'll tell him that, again, Fitzgerald was terminated for performance, and there's plenty of stuff on the public record, so that we don't need to rehash it each time.
The reason Bob don't answer him.
Thank
is
you,
he's an
Bob.
elected official. Frank is
Okay.
an elected official.
Thank-
And he's our representative.
We
This is his
do-
question. He voted for it, not them.
All right.
So why
Okay.
are you protecting him? And Crane said he
Ne-
would take a question.
Next
Is he
question.
backing out on it now?
We do have a question that
I'll
came
stop
in
there. Thank
through
you.
text or the email, I'm not sure which, but it's what is the breakdown in improving bikeable, walkable public transit in the city? So, who
What was
wants
that
to
again?
take that one?
Oh, we got plenty of people. Let's see. That's also came in.
Okay.
Who wants to take bikeable, walkable public transit? Because that would mostly be found in our capital plan. And we also give some funding to Trinity Metro. Anybody got that? Dana. Look at that.
You need to use the mic. We're using the microphones because it's being recorded and shown live, and that's the only way we can hear it.
Thank you. So the question was about bikeable and walkable transit, ways to get to transit stops? Okay. What is the breakdown on improving? Oh, good. Okay. So the city has an active transportation plan, which was adopted a few years ago, and it identifies both on-street and off-street connections to get to important destinations, including transit stops and transit stations. So one of the things that we do each year is provide funding through Trinity Metro, in partnership with Trinity Metro, I should say, to provide sidewalk and ADA access improvements to various transit stops. And we're also working with them, likely this next year, to make some improvements to the bus stops and benches and those kinds of things as part of our pay-as-you-go capital budget. In addition, the city, through its pavement markings, also makes improvements to how streets are configured or laid out, so that when they redo a street, they try to think about who are all the users on that street. And in some cases, that might mean providing a safe route for a bicycle in its own lane, or in some cases, that might mean a side path where it's, say, 10 feet wide, where you could have a bicycle and a pedestrian share that route. So there's a good partnership. In fact, the City Council received a briefing today from Trinity Metro on transit initiatives, and so encourage you to watch that. It was a great presentation.
Okay. Our next question is, what is PAYGO?
I'll take that one. So that's being guilty of using acronyms, right, when we need to be a little bit clearer. So we take a part of the property tax rate, we call it PAYGO internally. It is the same as cash. So we take a proportion of the property tax rate. In this case, we're recommending 7 cents of the property tax rate. It goes to provide cash on an annual basis to maintain infrastructure that the city builds.
Okay. What is the purpose of increasing multifamily housing inspections? Brandon wants to come up and take that one. Brandon Bennett, our Code Compliance Director.
Since the late 90s, we've had a multifamily inspection program. It started because we had some substandard apartment complexes where tenants were living in really bad, really poor conditions. And then over time, it has developed into a clean and safe city initiative with crime-free multi-housing, where code and the police department work hand in hand to make sure that tenants are safe in their apartment complexes. And that if they have a complaint about crime or about a substandard condition, that it's easy for them to report, and they get service from both the police department and code compliance. So it doesn't take a lot to drive around the city and see all the new apartments that are being built, and that is drawing more, staff time, not as much as, say, the older complexes, but we need to be ready for that. And so part of this is growth. Part of it is there's a higher community expectation these days, where it used to be we responded to tenant complaints. Now we receive complaints from people that live in neighborhoods around apartment complexes where they are experiencing trouble with the lack of management or parties or litter and things like that. The good news is that the vast majority of this budget increase is actually paid for by the apartments themselves, that there's a fee that they pay each month to the city. And while it doesn't cover some of the initial capital expenditures with the growth of the apartment complexes and stuff, it will pay for the operating costs. So that's good news for your general taxpayer.
Are there any questions from anybody in the room before we take another one from the online viewing audience?
Hi, I was wondering what the decision process was to, I realize you're dropping the property tax rate, but you're actually increasing it above the voter approved rate and using some of your unused increment. Are you planning on continuing to use unused increment in the future, or was this a one-time, we have specific needs today?
That's a great question. I'm impressed that you know voter approved tax rate, unused increment, and what else? But
I'll admit I'm the treasurer for the city of Arlington.
Yeah.
I live here.
I think that's.
I grew up here. This is my community.
I think that's awesome. How many people knew what voter approved tax rate and unused increment? Thank you. All right, so I'm going to try to break that down a little bit. So when you think about the growth in assessed values, part of that comes from new development. What the state of Texas has said is cities can keep 100% of new growth. But a number of years ago, the state legislature, with their infinite wisdom, decided they need to limit growth that cities and counties and school districts and whoever else can capture from the growth in existing values. How am I doing so far? All right. And what the state said is you can only capture 3.5%. Right, so we can get all the new growth and only 3.5% of the existing values. Except if there's a year that it didn't go 3.5%, you can capture that, what's called an unused increment. And that occurred during the pandemic in calendar year 21. Right, when the growth in existing values in Fort Worth only grew by less than 0.5%. So we can capture essentially the 3% growth that we didn't capture in 21. We're only capturing a part of that, and the state said you had 3 years that you could look back to capture that. So, our tax rate at 71.25 is higher than the voter approved tax rate, which I think is close to 70.9. So it's a little bit higher, and it's because we're capturing an increment from 2021.
Are you planning on continuing?
No, not necessarily. No, no. What'd you guys do in Arlington?
We're below. We
Okay.
have not used the unused increment.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, we have another.
That was inside baseball for those of you that
Okay, our next, it's kind of a triple question, but it all has to do with the same topic. What does it mean to clean homeless camps? Where do the people go when they are displaced? And what is the HOPE team? And I know we got a similar question at another meeting, and Chief Noakes, I think, did an excellent job answering it.
he did.
So what does it mean to clean homeless camps? Where do they go when they are displaced? And what is the HOPE team? I think maybe starting with the HOPE team would be.
Absolutely. That's an absolutely wonderful question. So the HOPE team, it stands for the Homeless Outreach Program Enforcement Team. So what we have are some officers who are specially trained to deal with our unhoused population in Fort Worth. We're actually asking for an increase in this year's budget through the CCPD portion of our funding for 6 new positions, 5 officers and a sergeant, so we can actually expand what we've been doing. And here's why. We've known for a long time in law enforcement that we had to have a new strategy when dealing with the homeless. Oftentimes when we're dealing with the homeless, we're also dealing with those who might be mental health consumers, correct? So we have these combined teams where we come together with our partners in fire, we come together with partners in the mental health field, social workers, mental health counselors, to provide resources, to wrap around resources for those who are homeless who are willing to take the assistance. Because we find oftentimes someone who is homeless, maybe they just need a hand. Maybe they need some help. So whenever the teams go out, say, to a homeless camp, the very first thing they do is try to get an assessment of what this person may need. What kind of resources are required? What can we do to get this person back on their feet? Do they need mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling? They need help with housing, with a job? What do they need? Because before, our response was all we could do, really, take them to jail, right? We want to be able to provide resources. So that's the first thing that the HOPE team offers. Now, there are times if a person doesn't want the assistance, they fail to comply with the requests to move, eventually they may have to be moved. And that's where our good friends in code compliance come in. And do you want to speak a little bit about that, Brandon? Okay, they basically come in and help us assist with the cleanup. And really, I think sometimes people get an idea of what a homeless camp is or isn't. And I've been to a lot of cities across the country. And has anybody been to Los Angeles recently? It's absolutely depressing. Go down Skid Row, drive down any highway, look at the overpasses, it's just lined with people who are camping, but it's basically become their residence. The sanitation conditions in downtown are such that when I was there, they actually said they're seeing diseases that they haven't seen since medieval times. Typhus, typhoid fever. That's unacceptable. We are not criminalizing homelessness in Fort Worth, but we're not going to enable that behavior either and make it unhealthy for all of us. What we want you to know is we're doing the best we can to provide those unhoused with the resources they need to be successful, but we're also going to make sure you have a clean, safe environment to live in as well. I hope that answered the question.
Do we have any more questions from anyone in the audience? Do we have any more online?
I noticed that there was an increase in neighborhood patrols in the budget, and I wondered how, I mean, we're all seeing that social workers would be maybe better placed in some certain calls to 911, and how is that being addressed?
Another wonderful question. We actually are being blessed with a very generous staffing package this time around. It really, from what I've heard talking with others who've been here longer than me, maybe one of the most generous we've had. But we're being very strategic in how we place those positions. You mentioned more presence, more officers in the neighborhoods. That was one of the things we saw in the citizen survey that the city did, because we want that kind of feedback. There's 3 things we're looking at when it comes to staffing. We had a staffing study done not too many years ago. We're looking at those recommendations. We're looking at our own internal review of what we need, where we're weak, but we're listening to stakeholders. We're listening to community members. We're listening to our city council members. One of the things that we saw the community talk about a lot was our response to people who are in mental health crisis. Touched a little bit on that earlier, talking about our unhoused population, but this is different. This could also mean someone who lives in a home, an apartment, wherever it may be, who may be in mental health crisis. Years ago, finally, law enforcement realized a lot of the people who were having negative interactions with and sometimes having to use force weren't really criminals, but maybe they were people who were just in crisis, who didn't understand our commands. Maybe they just didn't know what was going on, and we didn't know how to respond because we weren't trained. But the sad fact of the matter is you can't call a social worker 24 hours a day. I wish you could. We're working on that. So what we have is our crisis intervention teams, which will partner an officer. All our officers are becoming mental health trained peace officers, something put on by the state. We're making sure they all get it. But this team has even more extensive training on how to deal with someone who might be in mental health crisis. But they're also partnered with master's level or above trained counselors, social workers, mental health professionals. Because there are times where we may have to go, if it's a dangerous situation, we will take the lead to make sure things are safe, and then that counselor can come in. But there's also times where we show up, if it's not a dangerous situation, we actually take a step back, let that counselor take the lead, and they deal with the situation. Because there are times when if we show up, it might escalate things. We need someone to come in and de-escalate things. So the officers are trained to do that themselves. They have differently marked cars. They don't dress like this, so they're not as intimidating when they approach. But oftentimes they can just stand back and let that counselor take the lead on those calls. And we've seen great results from that. And those are another team, those members that will benefit from this budget, because we're asked for 3 more members for that team as well. We're trying to make sure we're putting the resources where they're needed the most, in response to our stakeholders, and that'll be one of the teams that gets more personnel if this budget passes.
Is there discussion of changing a hotline so where there's people in communities that don't want to call 911 but need that type of assistance?
988. It is a new number. There is a number you can call now. It's 988. If you need mental health assistance, you don't have to call 911. You can call that number instead. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
We have kind of a continuation on the homelessness topic, and it's got 2 parts. Where do people go when they leave the homeless camp, and why is there such an effort to push anti-homeless infrastructure? Anybody want to?
I'm not sure I understand the question on the anti-homeless infrastructure. There are different options. Obviously, we have some shelters and things within the city of Fort Worth where someone can go, but one of the biggest initiatives the city of Fort Worth is putting on right now is permanent supportive housing. I don't guess Tara is here, is she? Permanent supportive housing. There are certain criteria that must be met. I believe it's being homeless for a year.
And more efficiently throughout the city. So moving throughout the city more efficiently is important. The other piece that the question didn't ask about is equity. And so that's something that we've been emphasizing with our transportation investments, whether through the bond program or through PAYGO, is trying to look at areas where we've neglected our infrastructure in minority-majority areas or super minority-majority areas. And so that's one of the criteria that we used in helping to allocate funds. And so that tends to be in a lot of our older parts of the city, where the infrastructure is older, where there's gaps in our networks, particularly sidewalk networks. And so there's a lot of things that are being done there that will help from an equity standpoint. And then from an eco-friendly standpoint, I think you could say that reducing congestion will help with emissions and air quality. And in fact, the city often receives federal congestion mitigation and air quality grants to help with those kinds of improvements. We also are working with Trinity Metro to expand the transit system. So encouraging people to use alternative forms of transportation can help from an environmental or ecological standpoint. Let me think, what else? And then the other piece is, again, trying to get folks to jobs. And so the eco-friendly, I think, is meant from an environmental standpoint, but I would also use eco as economics and equity. So. Lauren, anything you want to add? Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next one, you mentioned community feedback. Do you have social and demographic breakdown of this feedback? I'll go ahead and take this one. We do not, for the feedback that we're getting on the budget. We don't have specific like demographic information for each person that's responding. But what I will say is that, and then part of that question was an opportunity to talk about equity. When we looked at the different ways for people to provide feedback, we tried to make sure that people had a lot of different options during this budget conversation to provide their feedback. So with the meetings, we've had meetings in English and Spanish in person for those that want to come to a meeting. We've had the online option for people to provide feedback. We also, for the first time, as I mentioned, people can call the call center and they can provide their comments, English or Spanish, and we're compiling all of that information to make it as easy as possible for people to give us the input in whatever platform they're comfortable with. And as David mentioned earlier, we're taking the feedback now during the budget process, after he's presented the proposed budget. But as he mentioned, this is something that goes on year round. And it's working with our community partners, working with our neighborhood associations, our HOAs, our community survey. And in those, especially the community survey, we do capture that demographic information, and we do know like the geographic breakdown. So some of the information we have and the input we get, we do have that. But for the specific budget input that we're doing at this time, that's not a question we're asking in our online form. Anything else? Any other questions? Well, thank you, everybody. And again, I'm going to remind you that there are a lot of different ways that you can continue to give us feedback on the budget, and we'll be having more of these meetings around town. This is one was being recorded, and we'll have that posted on the website. And all of the presentations that council receives and all of the reports that they receive during the budget process are all being posted on the 2023 budget page of the website. So you can go and look at any of the information that we're giving the council if you'd like to read that. David, do you want to say anything else? All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. I appreciate it.
At shepherding this project all the way through, all the community advocates that really helped us, and Kibo Works, who was the group that helped bring this project to fruition after I was moving to Hawaii and kind of not able to complete this after years working on the project. And of course, a big special thank you to all the fabricators and engineers and the installation team on the project. So this project has been always about connecting to communities, and the idea of using these iconic longhorns in a beautiful sculptural way, echoing the patterns of birds in flight, really becoming something coming from the celebration of the early aviation that the city was known for, and using that to create a dynamic sculpture that really talks about the technological evolution of the city, wanting to act as a point of celebration that connects the city from two vantage points along that Hemp Hill Lamar area. Thank you again so much for coming, and we are happy that this project is finally up and that it can be used to celebrate another part of the city. So thank you again. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Scott Daniels, and I'm your answer man. Send any question my way, and I'll answer it for you. Today's question, very timely. It's been a hot summer. and air conditioning is a must. The question is, what can I do if my AC is broken? I've got you covered. There's a way to get your air conditioner fixed at no cost. LIHEAP, which stands for Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, is a federal program that helps pay people for heating or cooling your home. And it will pay for your electric, gas, and propane bills too. The good folks over at the City of Fort Worth's Neighborhood Services Department and the Community Action Partner Services will work with you to get you set up right for free. All you've got to do is sign up at fortworthtexas.gov/neighborhoods. Now, that's a lot of letters, so I'll link it to the video. And the application process is easy. You must live in Tarrant County and be the account holder for your utilities. You could be eligible for money to fix or even replace your broken air conditioner and pay your bills. I'm Scott Daniels, your answer man. Send any question to me and I'll answer it.
From the River Ranch in Fort Worth Cowtown, the music of Texas is upon you. The music of Texas is upon you. Good to have you with us. Whether you're watching on television or listening on radio, here's one of the all-time favorites. Tommy Duncan gave Cindy Walker the idea for this song, and she wrote a hit when she wrote Bubbles in My Beer. And to sing it for you, here is Curtis Potter.
Tonight in a bar alone I'm sitting, apart from the laughter and the cheer, while scenes from the past rise before me, while watching the bubbles in my beer. A vision of someone who loves me brings a lone silent tear to my eye, and I know that my life's been a failure while watching the bubbles in my beer. Bugger! That's Curly. Uh-huh. I'm seeing the roads that I've traveled, that old road paved with heartaches and tears. And I'm seeing the past rise before me. It's just as empty as the bubbles in my beer. A vision of someone who loves me brings a long silent tear to my eye. And I know that my life's been a failure while watching the bubbles in my beer.
Yes, sir. Curtis, I know Cindy would be tickled to death. I know she loves the way you sing just walking out the door. Curtis Potter. I can't remember what Carl Vaughn is going to sing. I know he's going to do it in E flat, and I hope the band remembers. Carl, do you remember what you're going to sing? No. Oh, I know it's an old Hank Williams song, one of the favorites, called I Can't Help It If I'm Still in Love with You. will just come on in here and sing it for us. Carl Vaughn.
Today I passed you on the street, and my heart fell at your feet. I can't help it if I'm still in love with you. Somebody else stood by your side, and he looked so satisfied. I can't help it if I'm still in love with you. A picture from the past came slowly stealing as I brushed your arm and walked so close to you. Then suddenly I got that old time feeling. I can't help it if I'm still in love with you. Just the way I used to do. And heaven only knows how much I miss you. I can't help it if I'm still in love with you. I can't help it if I'm still in love with you.
Mighty fine. Old Hank would love that one for sure. Fella coming on now to sing some good songs like Carl just sang, and he loves Hank Williams, Bob Wills, or Lefty Frizzell, or Ernest Tubb, or any of those songs. And you know, I didn't even ask him what he's going to do, but I know it's going to be good. From Jacksboro, Texas, here he is. Joe Paul Nichols. What is it?
Storms never last.
Very long.
Storms never last, do they, baby? Bad times all pass with the wind. Your hand in mine stills the thunder, and you'll make the sun shine again. I followed you down so many roads, baby. While you picked wildflowers, I sang your song, sad song. And every road you took, I know your search was for the truth. And the cloud that's brewing now won't last for long. Storms they, baby? Bad times all pass with the wind. Your hand in mine stills the thunder, and you'll make the sun shine again. All right. Oh, here's those Texas twin fiddles. I followed you down so many roads, baby. While you picked wildflowers, I sang your song, sad song. And every road you took, I know your search was for the truth. And the cloud that's brewing now won't last for long. Storms never last, do they, baby? Bad times all pass with the wind. Your hand in mine stills the thunder, and you'll make the sun shine again. And you'll make the sun shine again. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe Paul. Now, wait a minute. Let's see. Which album is that off of, CD?
That's on These Old Eyes Have Seen It All CD. That's probably the most requested song on it.
Is it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
sure is.
Written by Mrs. Waylon Jennings. Hey, Craig Chambers. Hey, thank you for being here. We get old Craig up here. He was scheduled a little bit later on, but we're going to try to get him up here right now because we're going to take a break here in just a little bit. But before we do that, we can get Craig up to do a tune, and then we're going to, after the break, just let the band cut loose and do some things that they'd like to do because we have what we feel the best pickers in the world right here on this stage. Among the best pickers in the world, for sure. And they're so great. Well, we're going to turn them loose here in just a little bit after we turn Craig loose.
Oh, but I can. Deep within my heart lies a melody, a song of old San Antone, where in dreams I live with a memory beneath the stars all alone. It was there I found beside the Alamo enchantment strange as the blue of above and a moonlit path that only she would know. Still hears my broken song of love. Moon in all your splendor, know only my heart. Call back my rose, rose of San Antone. Lips so sweet and tender, like petals falling apart. Speak once again of my love, my own broken song. The words I know still live in my heart all alone. For that moonlit path beside the Alamo, and rose, my rose of San Antone. Know only my heart. Call back my rose, rose of San Antone. Lips so sweet and tender, like petals falling apart. Speak once again of my love, my own broken song. Words I know still live in my heart all alone. For that moonlit path beside the Alamo, and rose, my rose of San Antone.
I've had, you know, I was thinking about, for some reason, you're doing driving nails in my coffin, and I don't know why. But is San Antonio, you hadn't recorded San Antonio Rose yet?
No, I haven't.
And I was just wondering if it's going to be on the one that's coming out before long.
It's not. You know, it's been done so well for so long, and after Leon Roush does one, what is there I can do to it?
Hey, Craig, appreciate it so much. And folks, we'll be right back with more of the music of Texas right after this.
Hello, my name is Estes Tucker, and I want to personally invite you to join us, the Fort Worth Tarrant County Minority Leaders and Citizens Council weekly noon lunch forum every Wednesday at 12 o'clock at the Community Christians Church Education Building located at 1720 East Vickery at the Riverside Drive exit. In case you're not able to come to the live lunch broadcast, you may catch us on Fort Worth Community Cable every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Channel 31. Please join us.
Well, with this great band, we're going to have them get loose on an old Bob Wills favorite with the big band here with the brass and all. You're going to love this. Tommy Morell on the steel, Tommy Alsop on the lead guitar. Right behind me, Larry Reed on saxophone, and Ronnie Schultz on trumpet. Tommy Perkins standing up and playing drums as usual. Mark Abbott on bass. The twin fiddles of George Upmore and Bobby Boatwright, and the piano of Curly Hollingsworth, and that old Bob Wills big band favorite called Big Beaver. Fellas? That's just double tough, isn't it? My. A great band. And I just don't know where you'll find, not only are they just great musicians, but the soul, the feel they have. You know, when Bob, pretty good old voice to go along with it, you betcha. Back in 1973, Bob Wills wanted to do three last things. He knew time was near. He wanted to record one more time. He wanted to make another trip to Nashville. He was honored by ASCAP, one of the three licensing bureaus that you have to belong to have your music performed. He wanted to make one last personal appearance. He did it Boyle Nix's Stampede out of Big Spring, Texas. For the recording, he chose everybody, the songs. He chose the producer. He chose Tommy Alsop, chose all the musicians to be on there. And Cindy Walker wrote some songs, original songs for that particular album, called For the Last Time, and perhaps you have it in your collection. One of them was called What Makes Bob Holler. And of course, what made Bob holler was what he heard. And I got to tell you, he would have had to holler a whole bunch on that particular version of Big Beaver. It's just great. Tommy, we have some time left. How about featuring the fiddles right now and an old breakdown or two, fellas? Okay, we'll start with George Upmore, then Bobby Boatwright. Tommy, before y'all hit the theme, hey, that was great, fellas. George Upmore and Bobby Boatwright. But let me tell you, every member of the band, plus a whole lot more, are part of the Lincoln County Cowboy Symposium, held the second weekend in October each year out in Ruidoso. We start off on Thursday night with a special tribute to Bob Wills and the greatest array of Western swing musicians you'll ever see, of quality musicians. And a lot of the young musicians are on stage. We raise money through the Bob Wills Scholarship Fund at South Plains College in Levelland, Texas. And by the way, it's the only college in America that offers a credited course in Western swing, bluegrass, blues, commercial country, and rock and roll. So that's on Thursday night and Friday, all day Friday and Saturday. But let me tell you, on Thursday night, Friday afternoon, and Saturday afternoon, we'll have from 15 to 18 fiddles on stage, and Tommy has them doing like Faded Love and Maiden's Prayer together, and then he gets each of them to do their favorite breakdown, and they all wind up on Liberty. And folks, it is unreal. If you like to dance, we have two fabulous dancers, have a gospel concert. That's always in October. Well, as I see, according to that old clock on the wall, we are about out of time here on the Music of Texas this week. We thank you so much for watching, so much for listening, and anytime you can, we hope you'll join us in person right here at the River Ranch at 500 Northeast 23rd. We're here the first Monday night of every month, taping 4 shows, and we'd love for you to be here in person. Thank you so much. Speaking for this great band, saying so long from Cowtown and the River Ranch.
With the mission to educate and engage Fort Worth residents to take responsibility for their community's environment, Keep Fort Worth Beautiful is the city's program to support and promote all things sustainable in Fort Worth. Established in 1978, Keep Fort Worth Beautiful supports many outstanding city programs. Vital citywide efforts including the Adopt a Street, Park, or Creek programs, Forestry's Tree Grant program, and graffiti abatement. Keep Fort Worth Beautiful's signature events are the Cowtown Great American Cleanup, where thousands of volunteers clean up litter and debris across the city, and the Earth Party, held after the cleanup to celebrate the Earth in Fort Worth. Keeping Fort Worth beautiful requires the help of every Fort Worth resident. Taking care of our city requires action by you. Get involved by cleaning up trash on land, recycling more, properly disposing of household hazardous waste, conserving water and energy, preventing stormwater pollution, reducing air pollution, and living healthier. Join Keep Fort Worth Beautiful to get the job done. To learn more, check out the program's details on the city's website.
What will your later years be like? The Fort Worth Best Years Club gives seniors a chance to connect, create, and contribute at 8 community centers throughout the city.
I see them more than I see my family. And we are family.
Here's just part of what the City of Fort Worth Best Years Club has to offer.
Bingo!
The Fort Worth Best Years Club at a community center near you.
And it keeps me happy.
At Northside Community Center, Loteria is a Best Years Club favorite. But it's not all about the game.
I enjoy coming because I have a lot of friends that I can talk to. And if I have a problem, they listen, or I listen to them.
Whether it's dominoes or cards, seniors enjoy the chance to spend time with friends.
Oh, divertirme, jugar con todos.
Guest speakers help seniors learn about something new. Exercise programs keep seniors healthy. Some enjoy walking in the gym. Others choose pickleball, a crazy cross between badminton, tennis, and ping pong that's sure to get your heart rate up. The Best Years Club, helping seniors connect, create, and contribute. Learn more about Northside senior activities online or by phone.
Captain Crud here, and my job is fighting for a cleaner, safer world. Kids, I've got a few questions for you. Sometimes when it rains, the water runs off the grass and down the curb into a big dark hole in the side of the street, doesn't it? What do you think happens to all that dirty rainwater and crud? Well, it does not go to a treatment plant to be cleaned and recycled. No. It goes, as is, straight to your neighborhood creek, river, or lake. As is means it takes everything in its path, like dirt, trash, oil that drips from cars, weed killer from your lawn, and yes, even doggy poop. I hate that. That's right. All that crud flows down the street and dives into that big hole along the curb, otherwise known as a storm drain. And it ends up polluting our creeks and lakes, harming fish and other wildlife. Let me show you what I mean. Take a look at my arch enemies, the cruddies. They want to see harmful chemicals go down the storm drain. Here's Bloomer, the plant food cruddy, and Pesty, the weed killer cruddy. Then there's Van Goo, the paint cruddy, Scrub, the soap cruddy, and finally Otto, the automotive cruddy. When I see them, they make me want to say, boo! Can you say that too, Crud Crusaders? When I say cruddy, you say boo! Here we go. Cruddy! Boo! Let's try it again. A little louder this time. Cruddy! Boo! Okay, that's good. You know crud is anything grimy, gooey, icky, yucky, like the stuff that washes off when you clean your bike or the family car. This is one of Scrub's favorite hangouts, 'cause he's the soap cruddy. Boo! Remember, when I say cruddy, you say boo. Oh no, there's Scrub now.
Whoa, dude! These suds are like totally awesome. They're going right down the driveway and into the street. Woo! Surf is up, dude. I bet I can ride this wave all the way down the curb. At this rate, I'll make it to the storm drain in no time. Wipe out! This is so cool! Awesome! Splish splash, I'm a taking a bath. See you with it. Oh, but dude, like I made a major soap ring around the creek. Ew, dead fish ahead. I hope Captain Crud doesn't find out.
Too late for that. You're coming with me, Scrub. I'm taking you to the Environmental Collection Center.
Ah, dude!
Where they know how to deal with cruddies like you. Boo! You know, Crud Crusaders, detergent is a major pollutant in our creeks. But this crime against nature can be prevented if you wash your bike or car on the lawn instead of the driveway. Better yet, tell your family and friends to go to a commercial car wash where dirty, soapy water drains to a treatment plant to be cleaned and recycled. There are probably lots more cruddies. Boo! Under your kitchen sink or in your storage shed. Stuff like paint, oil, weed killer, and household cleaners. First of all, they're dangerous to you, your little brothers and sisters, and your pets. They're not for play. Crud Crusaders, you can help me out by reminding family and friends to put these harmful products up high and out of reach. And when it comes time to get rid of that leftover paint or oil, adults can take these cruddies to the Environmental Collection Center. That's because hazardous chemicals like these should not be put in the trash or poured down any kind of drain where they can pollute our earth and water. Let's talk about another natural resource, trees. How many of you know that trees produce oxygen? Go ahead, raise your hands. Good. Now, how many of you also know that trees are cut down to make things like newspaper and wrapping paper? Good. Well, Crud Crusaders, you can help me save our precious trees by recycling paper at your house. Use newspaper, not paper towels, to clean windows and mirrors. Wrap gifts using the comics section instead of wrapping paper. And put old newspaper in the green recycling bin, along with aluminum and tin cans and plastic drink bottles. There are a lot of people out there slowly destroying Mother Earth, so it's our job to save her. One more time, Crud Crusaders. What do you say when you see a cruddy? Boo! That's right. Now it's time to go to another school to see if I can recruit some more Crud Crusaders. I only hope they're as smart as you are. Thanks, Crud Crusaders. Conquer your crud. When I say cruddy, you say boo. Here we go. Cruddy. Let's try it again. A little louder this time. Cruddy.
This is so good! Awesome!
Fort Worth has watering restrictions year-round because saving water is important every day of the year.
So when can I water?
Before 10 a.m. and after 6 p.m. That's when wind and evaporation are lowest and less water is wasted.
Before 10 a.m. and after 6 p.m. Got it. But what days?
Your watering days are based on your street address. If your house number ends in an even number, you may water Wednesday and Saturday. If it ends in an odd number, water Thursday and Sunday. Tuesdays and Fridays are for apartments, businesses, and such, and nobody waters on Mondays.
Nobody?
Nobody. So winter, spring, summer, and fall, remember.
Water before 10 and after 6, and know your watering days, but no more than twice a week.
Watering by handheld hose, drip irrigation, or soaker hose is allowed at any time. For more information, visit SaveFortWorthWater.org.
Whether we drive over them, into them, or around them, potholes drive us all crazy. Don't get distressed. The city's pothole crew is working to fix them. Crews assigned to each quadrant of Fort Worth look for potholes along the city's 7,700 lane miles of pavement. At just under 25 minutes per repair, this fast-working crew expects to fill almost 15,000 potholes this year. The only thing slowing them down is finding the next pothole. That's where you come in. When you see a pothole, call 817-392-1234 and report it. The pothole crew gets reports in real time on city mobile devices. The goal is to fix potholes within 48 hours of getting your report, or faster if they happen to be in the neighborhood. Truth is, weather, traffic, and aging streets mean potholes are with us year-round. So just don't dodge that pothole. Report it, and the pothole crew will fix it. Call 817-392-1234 and give the street location, or report it online. The pothole crew and you, working together for a safer Fort.
Rummy Cube is a favorite pastime at Handley Meadowbrook Community Center, where seniors gather to play games with friends.
I see them more than I see my family. And we are family.
A sense of being in community and being together with people. The fellowship that I have with friends here.
Games are a big part of the Best Years Club, but fitness is a priority too, and these seniors have lots to choose from. Treadmills, stationary bikes, and weights help work specific muscle groups. Walking in the gym, everyone at their own pace, is an easy way to get the heart rate up. And low-impact exercise classes improve flexibility and stamina.
One day I was really stiff and I went in and exercised, and when I got through I felt so much better. So that convinced me that it's really important, and I go every time I can.
It's like a second home for us through the weekdays. And we love each other,